All right, young scholars, everyone can hear me, correct?
I can.
Awesome. All right. So initially, you may have seen that there was some information in the Blackboard page about doing a welcome app this week. Um, so over the weekend, I went through initially what I was going to have us do for the course, and none of the projects from that textbook that was published back in 2020 actually ran properly in Android Studio. So I decided to make some changes. The only real thing this affects are going to be the three app assignments, where instead of fixing up the welcome app this week, you're going to fix up the recipes app that we're going to work on today. So I upload these two slide decks, and I'm going to go through a few points within these slides. There's additional slides in here that also provide you more information on how to create apps within Android Studio, specific pointers like this is how you create a button, this is how you do this. So, what we're going to do today is go through those two PowerPoint slide decks, the certain slides that I think are important. Then we're going to open up the Easy Recipes program or app within Android Studio. And we're going to work on that. If we do not finish up today, we will continue working on that later in the week on Wednesday. Okay. Let's see. Is everybody in here? We have three young scholars. Anybody waiting? No. Okay. All right. So the first chapter for this new text that you guys, again, don't have to purchase, I'll provide everything for you, is called Voila, Meet the Android. So on slide 5, when we covered this last Wednesday, there's two primary mobile operating systems, iOS for iPhone and Google Android. Google Android has a bit of the market share. I think it's like a 60-40 split, maybe a 55-45% split. And as you already know, apps are mobile applications created for smartphones. So the idea behind Android Studio is that it's open source. In other words, anybody can access your code once you put it out there. That's why, for example, dating apps, you can see Tinder and Bumble, and there's like 18 different apps that somebody could name off the top of their head simply because, they take what's already been done, modify it based on their needs, and then go and present what they would like to use otherwise. So Android Studio is basically inside it has what's called an emulator. I think one of you for the homework mentioned that you use uh, what was it, Game Boy Advanced emulator as one of your favorite apps to use. Basically, an emulator imitates what it's supposed to do. So when we go through Android Studio today, you will see that within the emulator, a little cell phone box pops up, and we'll make it bigger and go through it. And it literally shows us how we can use it or how it would appear when you're actually using that app on your own cell phone. Okay, we covered some of the features of what you can do last week. So Java is the primary language used with Android development. You'll notice when we actually program from scratch later on in the semester, that Kotlin is also used. Within Android Studio, you're able to convert from Java to Kotlin if you so choose. Have any of you had a web development course by any chance? No? Well, if
No.
you did, you'd know that XML is basically a data storage component. Within web development, it's used to have another web page retrieve data in order to display it. Within Android Studio, that's where most of our work is going to be done. The XML files, that information will be taken out by what's called the main activity.kt file. And you'll see that later today when we cover that. And then, like I said, these certain slides go through and provide you with more information, how you would use certain things. So when you're building an app, Google Play recommends three primary things. Reliability. In other words, is your app always going to open? Efficiency. Is it always going to run? And performance. Can people use it all the time without their phone freezing? It's easy to use. They don't have to keep deleting it and re-downloading it, etc. Right now, it sounds like in order to publish an app on Google Play, you have to sign a user agreement and you're charged $25 to publish your app on Google Play. Some of them can be offered for free and free to publish. For paid apps, you get paid 85% of the sales. You could also use Amazon App Store, but they, as you would expect, only pay you 80% of what you would earn on the sales through your apps. So what most people do is, unless they're really wanting to make money off of an app, is they'll put it out for free and then have paid upgrades. And last but not least, starting with Windows 11, if any of you have that, you can also download Android apps from the Microsoft Store. So that's going to be a plus going forward, because usually you would only be able to download them from your phone. Now you would actually be able to download them on a computer as well. Okay, and then for the second slide deck called Simplify the Android User, I want to touch on a few slides from there as well. So starting with slide 5, and you'll see this as we go through it today. Designing apps is like constructing a building. You'll see when we use Android Studio, it will literally make us build the app before we can actually use it. So first we create a user interface, an XML layout for every screen we're going to make. Then we need to create a Java class or activity for every screen. Then we have to code each Java class with appropriate objects. And then we test the application in the Android phone emulator, Android Studio. So you'll build it, and then if it builds correctly, then you'll run it, as we'll see later on today. So the reason we use the Android user interface within Android Studio is, in essence, to determine if our code is actually going to run. Similar to you write a Java code in BlueJ, Eclipse, Dr. Java, whatever it may be, it has to compile before you can run it, right? Same situation here. In Android Studio, you have to build before you can run. So it's basically like compile and then run, as if you were in programming. The main difference is that when you have dependencies, which is similar to importing, like you would in a Java program, behind the scenes, everything is imported into your system for you. Whereas the more imported classes you import with Java, the longer it's going to take to compile and run. Android, it's working in the background and does it for you. And again, there's more slides here on every specific aspect within. And like I said, we're just going to go through this in real time today. So you could always look back through those slides in order to see what we're talking about. So again, this ties into when you make your group project, your app for the group project. You want to plan out how your program is going to look, how it's going to be developed. You have to think about what you're going to do beforehand. What kind of program requirements are you going to use or need? What kind of user interface are you going to need? What kind of objects do you need to create in order to do that? Will your program actually build? And then will it actually run? And you'll be able to test that in the Android Studio Android emulator, which we'll show you momentarily. And you might want to create activities related. A screen where you're going to interact with, like you'll see in today's example, etc. As you saw in Java, there's classes, objects, etc. That's what we're going to use within our code as well. So one of the main files we're going to focus on is called the manifest file. And it contains the name of the Java application, a listing of each activity, and the permissions needed to access the other functions required for your app. It's going to require a certain minimum level of the Android API, and it will automatically add each activity you create in an edit file for you. So whereas Java programming, you make a mistake, it tells you an error. Android Studio, you make a mistake, it'll still try and run it for you and figure out what you're trying to do. Okay, last but not least, you should know this from Java programming. Same kind of situation. You might create a class, you might create methods, you might create method bodies in order to utilize your code effectively. All right, so as I mentioned, that was just the slide decks. Meet the Android and the Android user interface. Like I said, you can review the other slides or the other slides within those PowerPoints as you so choose at your leisure. So everybody has downloaded Android Studio, hopefully. So now go ahead and download this easyrecipes.zip from Blackboard and extract all of it. And once you do so, within Android Studio, you're going to select Open, and then go ahead and scroll through to wherever you downloaded it to. And select wherever you downloaded Easy Recipes to. So I have a folder within my downloads file, or folder rather. You may have downloaded it somewhere else. So everybody's clear on that, hopefully.
Yeah.
Zaza, Naya, you heard what I said about downloading because you just joined us?
No, I was there, so I did download it.
Okay. So again, you're going to download this easyrecipes.zip from Blackboard, extract all. So you have just a folder that says easy recipes. And then you would click open within Android Studio and then find wherever you downloaded your easy recipes to. Whether you downloaded it to documents, downloads, whatever your specific setup is. So once you've done that and you've selected your easy recipes, click OK. You might get this little warning. Go ahead and trust the project. And you'll notice down the bottom here, it's scanning files to index. They'll all pop up on the left-hand side.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask about. I think mine is still loading in
Yep.
terms of
See down
everything.
the bottom here, it says Great Old Build. Everything is being built and loaded in an Android Studio.
Okay.
See now it's configure projects with the little status bar there. And now everything pops up on the left-hand side. So this is already a pre-created app that I'm going to go through and show you all the aspects of, so you understand what goes in, all the effort that goes in to these different apps that you create. And Wednesday we'll do a different preloaded one, and then probably starting next week, we can go ahead and create from scratch. So once everything is loaded on the left-hand side here, go ahead and click this folder that says app with the little green dot on the folder. And where it says build, select make project. And you'll notice down in the bottom right-hand corner, it will say Gradle build running. You'll notice there's all different files here on the left-hand side. As it goes through the build, files and folders will pop up that say generated next to it. For example, res generated here. That is being created as the build goes through. So if the build works properly, you'll now see this green little play button over here. Or you could go to the run drop down and select the green play button that says run app next to it. So is everybody at that point so far, or some of you are still building the app?
Mine's still building.
Okay.
Too.
If it's finished, we can go ahead and run it.
Yep. Go ahead and either click under the run drop down, run app, or this green play button here on the side. And once you do so, you'll have the Android emulator pop up over here. So you go ahead and run app. And down the bottom here, you'll see Gradle build running. So now it's going through to produce that emulator of the app that we've uploaded here. Now it's launching on devices, which in this case just means it's popping up in the emulator. So did this emulator pop up in a little screen on your left? It should pop up like right here in the corner for all of you.
It didn't pop up for me, no.
No? Is it still running down the bottom here?
I wasn't aware we were supposed to run the code to show up the emulator. We're supposed to hit run.
Yep. Once you hit run, right in the corner here, where I'm circling on the screen, that emulator that just popped up on my screen, that's what will show up. But instead of as its own screen, it's going to show up in this little small area here. So I'll go ahead and run again, and hopefully so it should look like this, see? With the Android emulator in the corner there. Does everybody have that or no?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, good.
I don't have it yet.
So all I did was select this file here with the little box right above it that says window in order to make it bigger. So this way we can actually see all of it. So once you've opened it a little bigger that way by hitting the square that says window to make it larger, you'll see strawberry sorbet recipe, a picture of strawberry sorbet, and a button that says view recipe. What do you notice that the emulator here looks like?
A phone?
Yeah, it just looks like an Android phone with an app inside. So once you click on this view recipe button, you'll notice that recipe code appears. So in this instance, strawberry sorbet recipe. The ingredients I've changed. Yours will look a little different because this is what app number 1 is going to be for you. You're going to go through and change the ingredients and the directions to whatever you feel like changing them to. And I'm going to show you how to do all that right now. So I think it was something like 3 or 6 strawberries or something, a cup of lemon juice, 3/4 cup of sugar, a cup of water, something like that. So these ingredients and directions on my version have been changed, like I said, because this is what your homework will be for app 1. All right, so let's put that back off to the side by clicking that window box again. And now I'm going to walk you through what some of these files mean. So first go ahead and open the Android manifest.xml file.
My files won't load for some reason.
What's that?
My files won't load for
Your
some reason.
files are not loading?
Yeah.
So you don't have any of this on the side yet?
No, not yet. It says loading.
Okay, so down the bottom here, you still have something that says loading? Or there's nothing in the bottom right?
It says Gradle sync started a minute ago.
Okay, so it may still be loading everything in and building everything, but you got the idea, right? You would go
Yeah.
ahead and select build, make project, and then run app.
Okay.
So you'll notice here, as mentioned in the slide deck, we're naming the package of our app. In this case, it's Easy Recipes. The package is always named as com.example. Whatever your app's name is. You'll notice here we're inheriting schemas from Android. And we're setting specific aspects for our program. In this instance, we're labeling our app as Easy Recipes. That's why on the side here, you see at the top of the application, it says Easy Recipes. And we're referring to our main activity file here, which is over on the side here, that we'll show you momentarily. So the Android manifest.xml file helps declare the permissions that an app must have to access data from other apps and specifies the app's package name, which is helpful when building the app. So you notice here there's a launcher class, a main class. As I mentioned, it refers back to the main activity .java file here that we will show you momentarily. It also references that recipe Java class here on the left-hand side. And all of these files work together in order to build the app. All right, so those of us that are just joining, what you want to do is download easyrecipes.zip from Blackboard, extract it, then open Android Studio, select open, and go and find wherever that folder you downloaded is. Select it, and it's going to inherit everything that we're compiling here down in the right-hand side. And then once all that finishes up and it looks like this, where there's nothing, no status bar, you would go ahead and select build, make project. And then once that is done, you would select run and then run app. And you would have a little Android emulator here on the right-hand side. Next, let's reference what main activity.java is. This is the primary code of the app. Here we're creating a view panel with a button on it that utilizes the recipe class. So you see here, public class main activity extends app combat activity. Just like you would do if you were importing or using JPanel, something like that, within regular Java. So here we're creating a method that uses onCreate. In this method, we're creating a button, as I said. This button refers back to the recipe Java class, which we'll touch on momentarily. So that is basically the second method here. Once you had clicked that button to view the recipe, it now spits out the recipe. So then we open the recipe.java file, and here we're adding the information from the activity underscore recipe.xml file into the view panel. So again, recipe extends app.compat activity, but like I said, this line of code here takes the recipe we've set within the activity underscore recipe.xml file, and that's what's spit out when you view the recipe. So going back to the emulator screen, this is what I've modified my recipe to be. Yours, like I said, should be the original version. As I mentioned before, you'll notice that some of these files and folders say generated next to them. That's what occurs once you build and run your project. So next I want to touch on these files within the res drawable folder. You'll notice sorbet.png. What do you think that is?
That's the icon picture.
Yep, that was that little picture of the strawberry sorbet that came up when we first ran the app, where it said, you know, strawberry sorbet recipe, then the image, then view recipe. That strawberry sorbet image is simply that sorbet.png. So these IC launcher background.xml and IC launcher foreground.xml files, if you're to look through their code, you just see a bunch of let's hide that for a moment. Okay, there we go. You see, basically all we're doing within those files is setting up our view panel. So who knows the X and Y, you know, like a grid? We're setting one up as 85, one is 92. We're using 108 DP, which is for the graphics to indicate how it's viewed. We're setting certain colors within that view panel. Now, who knows the difference between the foreground and the background?
Never really heard of foreground, but the background is what's running. Uh, is like the colors of the.
The main difference is the background, what you see in the back. The foreground is what you see in the front. So in the example here, I'll give you, you see my Zoom screen here? I'm in the foreground. The background is the fake palm trees and beach behind me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So next we're going to focus on what is here in this layout folder. For focusing first on activity underscore main.xml. So you'll notice here where it says design, it shows you what each screen looks like. So this is our main screen. So that has the strawberry sorbet recipe, that picture here, sorbet.png, and that view recipe. But once you hit code, it now shows us the important factors. So you'll notice here on line 13, we're creating our title there, strawberry sorbet recipe. We're setting the text size to make it a little bigger so that we clearly see it. Next, we're importing that recipe image of strawberry sorbet, which is this sorbet.png off on the side. And last but not least, we're creating that button that was under the image and labeling it view recipe. We're setting the background of that button differently in order to make it easier to view. So that set up the first screen. Kesney, what do you think activity_resume.xml is going to do?
You said activity recipe. Isn't it gonna retrieve the recipes we lay out?
Yep.
Different recipes.
That is going to set up our second screen. When you click the view recipe button, it utilizes this activity recipe.xml file. And you'll notice when we have design here, it shows that recipe. And when you click on code, it shows you exactly what's happening. So within this file, we're setting up the second window view. Once you click that view recipe button, this recipe comes up. So first you have the title, strawberry sorbet recipe here. When you click in it, it may change to string TV title inside quotes. That's perfectly fine. After the title is created, next we have set the ingredients label, which is then followed by the 4 ingredients. So in mine, I have it how many strawberries you need, then a small amount of lemon juice, then a half cup of sugar, then 1 cup of water. What does the defaults actually say? Don't yours say something different? Like 3 cups of lemon juice, 6 strawberries, something like that? Yes, no, maybe so.
Can you repeat that?
When you look at your text, your ingredients should be different, right?
Uh,
I have like 6 cups of chopped strawberry.
Yeah. So the reason I did this and wanted to show you that is this is what you're going to be doing for your app 1 homework due Sunday night. All you're going to be asked to do is change the ingredients and the directions, submit this code from activityrecipe.xml, and then take a screenshot of your new recipe. So these are the ingredients, and then if you go below, You have the label for directions. And then I changed the directions to mix in blender until smooth, keep frozen until ready. So if you wanted to go in and change this, you would find in my example, how many strawberries you need. In yours, it says what, 6 cups of strawberries? So you would simply click into that string within the quotes. It will either literally say what is in what you've written, or it may say at string slash whatever it's defined as once you build it. So in this example, I'll change however many strawberries you need to 1 box of strawberries. Okay, so now that changes our first ingredient. So next I'll go and change our second ingredient, a small amount of lemon juice. So let's change that to a cup of lemon juice. So again, it may either have the actual text within these quotes for Android text, or it may say at string slash whatever it's labeled it as. Next, let's change the third ingredient, a 1/2 cup of sugar. Maybe you like sugar. So let's say a pound of sugar. It's a little much, but as I mentioned, I just want to show you how to exactly edit all this for homework app 1. Then you would change the last ingredient. Let's say instead of 1 cup of water, 1 pitcher of water. And then our directions are all set up on one line here. So in my example, it says mix in blender until smooth, keep frozen until ready to serve. Let's keep it that way just because that makes sense for directions. You're going to mix all the ingredients into a blender.
Professor, I just wanted to say I'm trying to do like what you're doing, but
Okay.
every time I click like within the quotes, it changes to something else.
Does it change to like at string slash whatever it names?
Yeah,
Like for
it does.
example, so just type over it inside those quotes. So see up here, when I clicked inside the first one, which is the title strawberry sorbet recipe, it changed it to at string slash TV title. So just select within the quotes, do backspace, 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 and just type in whatever you'd like it to change it to.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So once you've made all those changes, you'll now go to File, Sync Project with Gradle Files. And it now syncs everything up. You'll see down the bottom here, Gradle build mode with the status bar, configuring projects, build model, etc. Importing library data. So it goes through that same process again every time. But the more and more you do it, it should, in theory, go quicker. So now, build, make project, Gradle build running. Again, we have our status bar to show us as it's navigating through. Okay, now we see nothing there anymore. So it's built. And now we can run. Again, once it's finished going through that running process, we will get our emulator on the right-hand side here.
So you said when you click run, it pops up the emulator, right?
Yep. But see on the bottom here, mine is still going. It's at launching on devices. And now it's popped up here on the right. See the little phone behind me?
Yeah.
Then you click the box here that says window to make it full size. So everything in that activity main.xml file has stayed the same. So our first screen is completely the same. But once we click on the view recipe button, since we completely changed the activity underscore recipe.xml text, our second screen will now be completely changed. So you click view recipe, and now our recipe has completely changed. Our ingredients are now 1 box of strawberries, a cup of lemon juice, a pound of sugar, 1 pitcher of water. I did not change the directions though, like I said. And so this is what you're going to do for the homework. App number 1. All you're going to do is go into this activity underscore recipe.xml file, and you're going to scroll over wherever it says Android : text. If it changed it to a string, you should be able to scroll over it. And in this instance, it'll tell you that it's the recipe, strawberry sorbet recipe. As you go down, you'll have the ingredients label, then what your ingredients are. So feel free to change up the 4 ingredients. Feel free to change up the directions. When you
Sorry,
submit,
can you do the sync and build one more time? It's asking me to sync the files after I do changes. The
so you would
Gradle.
just do file, sync project with Gradle files.
Oh, okay, there.
No problem. And then again, you would build it, make project, and then once that's done, run app. And you'll see all the progress bars down the bottom here as it's running through. So when you're submitting your homework for app 1, you will copy all of this code from the activity recipe.xml file. It would probably just be easier to submit it into a Word file. So let me show you how we can do that here. So you'll go ahead and click inside that file, Control A to select all, and then Control C to copy it. And then open Microsoft Word up and go ahead and paste it inside Microsoft Word. And then you'll open your emulator to that second screen and do Control Print Screen. Go back into your Word file, do Control V. And apparently mine is using the snippet tool instead of paint. So you can go ahead and open up paint. And paste your image there. And you would copy that image into the Word file. And that's all you would have to submit. But we need to know and see that little emulator issue, or image rather, to make sure that all of your code worked, that you were able to sync it, that you were able to build it, that you were able to run it. Okay? So now I'm going to touch on a couple of the other aspects of what you will find within all of the apps that you build. So first I want to touch on strings.html, XML here. So literally everything from the initial version is here. So the app name is Easy Recipes. So when we click back open on both of our screens, the first view with the view recipe and then the recipe itself, it shows Easy Recipes. You'll see TV title is labeled as Strawberry Sorbet Recipe. You remember that's from the first screen. And our second screen, Strawberry Sorbet Recipe, is the defined title or text. Next, you had recipe image of strawberry. Again, we go back, that is that sorbet.png. That's the description. That's what the string is being named as. Then view recipe. That is the button created on the first viewing screen. Then our second viewing screen, we have ingredients set up, and then the 4 items. These were the initials. 6 cups chopped strawberries, 1 tablespoon lemon juice, 1 cup sugar. What is that? 1/4 cup cold water or 3/4? Whatever it was. I can't see, it's too small. Then we have the directions. Then we had the initial directions, process until smooth. That is why when you're going through and making those changes, you have to do file sync project with Gradle files in order to update the information within those strings. Basically, we're overriding or overwriting what we initially have set up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, awesome. So if you were here at the beginning, you probably or hopefully heard me say that the Gradles are basically like when you do Java, when you do the import java.util.scanner as an example, when you're importing a class. So this is basically what is done within the Gradles. However, they're done a little differently. They're called dependencies. So if you open where it says build.gradle module:app, if you were to open that, you see where plugins, ID, you should remember ID selectors from programming, hopefully. As you scroll down, you'll notice there's a class created called dependencies. you'll notice that there's a bunch of implementations. Those are, in essence, classes we're importing from the Android package in order to run our example properly. Test implementation. Works with this build config file. Android test implementation. Android test implementation as well. We're checking to make sure that those imported classes actually work. And how do we know that they actually worked?
If it runs,
Yeah, we were able to go file, sync project with Gradle files. It synced up. We were able to do build, make project. It built the app. We were then able to run the app and got the app in our emulator window. If these did not build or sync or run properly, instead of seeing this code in the bottom, that basically once you click that shows the emulator window, it would give you a bunch of errors in red text. In essence, like if you were to compile a Java program and you had a syntax error, it would show you where your errors are and indicate how to fix it. Well, I was actually thinking that was going to take a little longer to go through today, but apparently it did not. So again, let's see that it's going to open, hopefully. For homework due on Sunday night will be app number 1. Instead of going and editing the welcome app, like it said previously, you're going to use the easy recipes example we just went through in class, modify the code within that activity underscore recipe.xml file to represent different ingredients and directions. Like I showed you, it's very easy. They're all going to show Android : text. And all your string information is in with quotes, even if it changes to @string/ what it was defined as within strings.xml, it's fine. Backspace, 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 backspace within those quotes to type in your new information. And as I showed you, you're going to submit the source code just from that activity recipe.xml file, and then a screenshot of that new second screen. So here, where it shows your new ingredients and your new directions. This way I could see what you changed your code to, your ingredients, your directions, and then see that they came up on that second viewing screen within the app. Basically, it just shows me that you made the changes, you synced, you build, you ran, and the changes actually came up. So it should be simple enough. All right, and as I mentioned, when we first started, those 2 slide decks also have additional information, how you would create a button, how you would create a class, how you would create a method within the Android Studio. So since we were able to do that in an hour, on Wednesday, I'm going to have another example for us to go through, and we'll basically kind of do the same thing. Look through piece by piece what we're actually doing, building, making some minor changes, sync it, build it again, run it again to see how those changes modified the app. Then next week, we will basically start building some by scratch. Basically, this is to give you, some confidence in essence as you're going through when building these. So before I let you all vamonos for the day, are there any questions with respect to this?
Oh, it's pretty clear.
Okay. So once we start actually building them from scratch, it might be a little harder and a little more time consuming because you have to, just like when you're programming in Java, make sure that everything's spelled correctly, make sure your syntax is correctly, etc. So, Zaza, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Let me see. So before we build whatever changes we made, do we have to sync the project first, or we can just
Yep.
go?
So you'd go File, Sync Project with Gradle files. Like I showed you, that is because within strings.xml, that still has the initial strings that we're changing. So by syncing, we are overwriting everything. And then you build, overwriting it. Then you run, your changes will now show up. If you didn't sync it, it may or may not actually show your new changes. It may just defer back to these defaults within the strings.xml file. Okay, that makes sense, hopefully. The other thing I wanted to point out is, so for the Zoom meetings, I have them set up now to run the full class length, 12 to 145. So let's say we'll start at maybe 12:05, whatever it may be, just so everybody's in there. Like you said, I'm going to post them on Blackboard instead of emailing everybody, just because it kind of makes it easier. Everybody knows where they are. I forgot who it was. Somebody asked me last week to make sure they're up. So I had them up, whatever it was, Saturday evening, Monday morning, so that everybody had time to find them, make sure that they had their link set up and able to hop on. All right. So, like you said, on Wednesday, I'll upload another zip file. We'll go through another example together. And then starting next week, we'll start building some from scratch. So are there any examples? Are there any questions from anybody?
Yes, no.
All right. So if there are no questions, as usual, I will post up this video.
Oh,
with
wait,
the-
Professor.
Go ahead.
I do have a slight notice in Android Studio by the side, like in the upper right hand corner, it has like 5 warnings. Should I just ignore that, or?
Yep. As long as your emulator actually loads and you can see it, the warnings, just like in programming, they can be ignored. When they're in red down here, you have to fix them. They can't be avoided. It's not going to build or run without you fixing. If you just have here in the corner, like a little, I think it's, what is it, like a little shield? And it might have a
Like a
couple,
caution sign.
yeah. And it might have a number in it, like 6, 4, whatever it may be. Those you can ignore. Yep. So like I said, I will post the video up here at some point later today. So for those of you that popped in a little late, you can go back and review as you need to. If there are no other questions, I'll see all of you on Wednesday. And like I said, feel free to play around with this. For the app number 1 homework, it's not due until Sunday. So you can kind of play around with this. Again, we'll do another example on Wednesday and we'll play around with that one, the code as well. All right. So if there are no questions, as I said, I'll see all of you on Wednesday.
Okay, see you, Professor.
Okay, Professor.